Well, hello. Thanks for coming back to check out another video. So, we are here today to sit down and do an eyeshadow palette inventory. I recently did a June 2022 mid-year makeup inventory check-in, but I did not include my eyeshadow palettes within that video. However, I asked you guys and I got quite some good feedback on like, yes, we would love to see an updated palette video. So that is what we are going to do here today. I am suffering from like a hardcore case of allergies. So if you notice that my voice is like a little bit scratchy or I sound like I have low energy, that's all it is. So I need to split this video up into different pieces. I can't put out just one big long eyeshadow palette collection video like I did at the beginning of the year. So today we're going to just do drugstore palettes, I believe. And I only really have 3 brands that I classify as like my drugstore palettes. So I will of course leave timestamps for you guys so that you can skip around and just go brand by brand. Maybe there's a brand that you don't care about, you just want to skip over. I do want to first say before we get into this, again, collection videos are not a flex. This is just a, hey, here's what I have, you know. I like watching collection videos because I'm just really nosy. And I know most of you are like that, like in the same boat as me. No one is here to judge. On that judgment note, let's keep in mind, I am well aware that I have way more eyeshadow palettes than any one person needs in their life, like ever. But I'm really like thankful and happy and pleased with all of my palettes. Like I do enjoy them, and so it's the journey that I'm on is an eyeshadow hoarder. So I don't want to ramble anymore and make this video too long. We're gonna get into this. By the way, can you tell I'm ready for like fall and spooky season? So first brand we will do is Juvia's Place. This is the brand I own the least amount of palettes from in this particular like video. I used to own more from them and I got rid of them from my collection. Just either I didn't at the end of the day really like the color story, or I felt like I had something very similar from another brand that I enjoy more. Juvia's Place is a brand that I am choosing to no longer support, but I do have these palettes here in my collection, and the 4 that I have I really do enjoy, and so I will get use out of them. So the first one is one of their little quads that they came out with. This was from the Rebel line. So this is the Army quad. This is the dark green one. It's very pretty. You get 2 dark mattes and 2 dark green shimmers. This matte down here comes across a bit more of like as a like gray green on your eyes, but still really pretty. I love to combine this palette with this other quad that I have from them. So this is the Mints one. These are such good quality mint shadows, I must say. And I'm always drawn to like mint shades, but I don't really enjoy pastel shades. Like I think they tend to make me look a little bit sickly, but not with these particular ones. And having this little quad here, like this is enough to satisfy my itch of like, oh, but I want more mints, like I just come to this and pull it out. My favorite shade is this like icy minty shade up here. Like think ColourPop, the big 3. Okay, so then I do have 2 of their 9-pan palettes. I think this one, the Tribe, has been discontinued, but I don't know because I feel like they discontinue this palette and then they'll bring it back every so often. So it is a really pretty, like kind of, I wouldn't say grungy, but it's definitely like a more green color story, but you do get fun pops of like this kind of red orange, this bronzy shade, this baby pukey shade, and this blue shade is really pretty. I love pairing, like putting this blue shade on my lid and then topping it off with this kind of like iridescent shade. Like I think it looks white and on the camera, but on your eyes it has like this very kind of like limey green shift. So yeah, I really do enjoy the Tribe. And then my all-time favorite Juvia's Place palette should come as no surprise because I've rambled on about that fact for a long time. This is the Festival palette. I think this is an underrated color story. I just really enjoy this. I know it looks a little bit chaotic, but really it's a color story that is very cohesive, and all of these shades do play quite well together, and I do greatly enjoy this. This is a great palette to pull out like starting now and use it up until like the end of fall till we like transition to winter. Okay, so next we will do ColourPop. I have this little quad from them. I'm not sure. It's called On the Mango. I was gifted this from a family member. Have not yet used this, if I'm going to be quite honest with you guys, but it is really pretty. I do like the oranges that you get in here, and this shimmer shade seems to be quite lovely too. It is 3 mattes and 1 shimmer. I wish with it being a quad it had been 2 mattes and 2 shimmers, kind of like with the 2 Juvia's Place palettes. I just feel like that would have made it a little bit more versatile for me and my preferences. Then I have the Sonic Bloom palette, which is another perfect, great fall palette. I absolutely love berry shades and like burgundy shades. This shadow down here, I think on camera looks like a black shadow, but it is just a very dark, like chocolatey brown, like darker than your standard chocolate brown. The shimmer shadows in this row are very lovely, and yeah, I'm really glad to have this palette in my collection. Then we have Lush Life, which is another good one. I would say these 2 palettes right here are probably hands down some of the best palettes that ColourPop is ever going to release, in my opinion. So here is Lush Life, like just the theming of the Sonic Bloom and the Lush Life, and like, so the packaging, the color story, just everything about them makes sense. And both of these palettes are the really good ColourPop formula, because I feel like sometimes they can be a little bit hit or miss. I just greatly enjoy this palette. I think it's really cohesive, and I love the blue shadows down here. They go with everything else that is in this palette. Then we have another, actually this is a really good one too, the Limoncello palette. So like these three are probably some of the best palettes that ColourPop will ever release. This one does have a mirror on it. So this is just kind of like a standard neutral palette, but what really amps it up for me are these 3 shimmers right here. So you've got this great like kind of darker green shimmer, but it has a little bit of golden like shift to it. Then you've got this kind of like pale yellow shimmer, which is really pretty. And then Easy Peasy up here is just this really great shifty like green brown yellow kind of shade. I just really enjoy this. I ignore the blue shadow in here because I feel like it doesn't mesh well with the rest of the palette. And then I didn't actually finish off this shade down here. I was trying to finish this shadow off. I was using it as like an eyebrow color, and I had pan on it, but the shadow decided to just, you know, leave the pan, and so it fell on the floor. So that's one way to pan your palettes. But yeah, this is what the Limoncello palette looks like. And then the last ColourPop palette that I have, again, this one is kind of an unsung hero. I feel like this one got slept on a lot. So this is the Lust for Dusk. I feel like ColourPop doesn't tend to put out a lot of cool tone palettes. Like, I know they have their Stone Cold Fox, and then they had the Fame palette. But other than that, and I guess they have the Taupes palette. But other than those, I really can't think. I feel like they are much more like colorful or warm toned heavy, you know, as far as a brand goes. But anyway, this is Lust for Dusk. Now, if you own this, you might be thinking to yourself like, Haley, your Lust for Dusk looks weird. It does. So this shadow and this shadow, and I believe this shadow are all from the ColourPop Sailor Moon palette. I just, at the end of the day, that palette, the shades that I really wanted it for ended up not working out as well for me, and I had better shadows from other palettes like in that same color. But I did enjoy those 4 shades that I pointed out to you, so I removed them from the Sailor Moon palette and popped out my least favorite shades from my Lust for Dusk palette and put them into here. And I feel like it still works because the Sailor Moon palette, while it's more like colorful and pastel, some of these shadows do lean a bit more on the cooler tone side, like this matte purple, for instance. So yeah, in case you didn't know, ColourPop does make magnetic pans, so if you are ever unhappy with the performance or color story, you can most certainly like rearrange it and make your own beautiful palette. Okay, so it should come as no surprise to you that BH Cosmetics is the most, like, the brand that I have the most palettes from. Now, I will say my family knows that I love BH Cosmetics. That is my favorite brand. And so I had a lot of them when they would find palettes of theirs at TJ Maxx, they would just pick them up for me, which I'm super grateful for. And then I'm not gonna lie to you guys, when I would see some of the palettes at TJ Maxx that I particularly wanted, I did pick them up for myself as well. So we're gonna go collection by collection with BH Cosmetics just to make this a little bit more manageable. So the first one is the Birthstone series that they did last year. So this is the Amethyst palette. Now all of these palettes within the Birthstone series line look the same. So you'll have this one big shade that represents the birthstone that they picked out for the month. Then you have 5 corresponding shades that kind of go with that, you know, bigger birthstone shade. And then every palette does have a pressed glitter in here. I just kind of ignore the pressed glitters. I don't really like those. I don't want to use those on my eyes. They don't really work as nail polishes for me. But at the end of the day, I really love the purpleness of this Amethyst palette. However, I wish this Humble shade, instead of being a peachy shade, would have been like another matte or shimmery purple eyeshadow. Then we have Aquamarine for March. I do have to say, I enjoy some of the colors from this one. Like, so the Aquamarine shade is this really pretty, like baby blue kind of shimmer shade. I really do enjoy this. Obviously, I can get a lot of use out of this like matte cream shade. And then this darker like red shade down here is quite lovely. But overall, the quality of this Aquamarine palette is a little bit different than some of the other Birthstone palettes. Like, it's not bad, but it's just a lot of the matte shadows in here, like this blue is not nearly like as impactful as some of the blues that are on the more pastel side that are in other BH Cosmetics palettes. So I just sometimes struggle to make this palette particularly work. Then we have Diamond for April. So this one is a really nice like companion palette. Now I will say this definitely gives me Natasha Denona Xenon vibes. If you were looking for like some great blacks and silvers and you can find this, like you wanted the Xenon palette, like I don't think you would be unhappy with this. And I do like that you get this pink and this brown in here. This diamond shade is quite lovely, as well as this darker, I don't know what it's called, Stunning, I think. It's like a darker silver, and then this one is a lighter one. So it's really fun to like fade these two together. Then the next Birthstone palette that we have is Emerald for May. Probably one of my favorite Birthstone palettes out of this line. I just think this was a really well done kind of like condensed down green kind of palette. Like, and I feel like BH Cosmetics is one of the few brands that does green eyeshadow palettes right, because like the Avocado Toast is a really good green eyeshadow palette as well. But yeah, I greatly have enjoyed this one. And even though some of these shadows are shades that I wouldn't necessarily like reach for or want in my collection, I do still really enjoy them from like within this palette. So like this Hard Worker shade is one of those like shimmery kind of coffee dark brown shades, and it's not something, like I said, that I typically like to use, but this has been really great for like putting on my outer V and then like blending in either the Artsy AF, the Total package, or the Emerald shade into it. It just makes for a really pretty eye look. Then we have Sapphire for September. Probably, you know, this one is better than the Aquamarine, but there are still some shadows within this one that I find to be a little bit underwhelming. So like I really wanted this kind of purpley blue matte shade here to be just so amazing. And I feel like you get a good punch from this shadow, but it fades away quite easily. Like it doesn't last on your lids as well as like some of the other BH Cosmetics shadows do. But overall, this is a really pretty kind of like wintry color story, and I really do enjoy that one. Then we have Opal for October, which is more of a pastel palette. Like I feel like if you have Lost in Los Angeles, which we'll get to later, you don't necessarily need this one. Excuse me. You've got 3 pastel mattes in here. Although these shimmer shadows that are in this palette are different from the shimmer shadows that are in the Lost in LA palette, and I really do like these shimmers. I don't get as much use out of this kind of like pinky purpley one, but this green one is so nice. And this one, I know it comes across looking very white on camera, but it is a white based shadow that has a pink flip to it. So think Cube from the ABH Subculture, or like Monster, the ColourPop Super Shock highlighter, those kinds of things where they have the white base but the pink shift to it. That's what this Opal shade offers you. And then the last one in the Birthstone series that I have is Citrine for November. Again, this one is one of my favorite ones just because I love me some good yellows and browns. Like it's one of the few good pairings that can never go wrong, in my opinion. Like you will not be disappointed with your eye look if you're pairing yellows and browns together. And I feel like this palette is one of the more cohesive ones. While it looks like very limiting in what you can do with it, I never get bored with this, and I feel like there's a lot that I can do. And this is a palette that I often like think to reach for when I'm like, ooh, I need that perfect yellow shade or that perfect brown shade. Like this 9 times out of 10 is the palette that I'm thinking of. Okay, so I have 4 palettes from their Say It collection. I feel like this collection was slept on a little bit, but one, I think, you know, they had 2 palettes from within this line that had like the cuss words on them, and I'm not like like, I'm not offended by that. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I think that it's a little, it comes across as like a little little cringe. Okay, I was trying to say 2 words. It comes across as a little cringe and a little try hard. You know what I mean? Like, oh, look at me, kids. I'm still really cool. But either way, this is the Optimistic AF palette from them. So this is the more like yellow-brown color story. Like, this one is really pretty. I feel like this and pairing this with the Citrine palette from the Birthstone collection is a lot of fun. And I really do enjoy playing around with this. This matte orange is such a pretty like mid-tone matte orange. This yellow is quite lovely. And then I absolutely love this shimmer shadow down here, LOL. It's kind of like a golden shade, and it does lean a bit more warm, and you guys know that's not like my favorite kind of lid shade to wear, but it has like this oranginess to it, and it just makes it so pretty and so wearable for me, and like what I'm looking for out of those more bronzy shadows. Then we have, are you ready for it? We have Looking Like a Snack. Okay. Have to say it that way every time. This is what this palette looks like. Honestly, this one kind of reminds me of the Festival palette from Juvia's Place, just because of this shade right here, like the hot pink in the dead center. I have played around with this one finally, and I do really enjoy it. I feel still though that this was one of those palettes where I didn't necessarily need it. Like, I do have these shades time and time again, and I guess you could really say that for every palette as we're gonna get into it, but this one does go a little bit underutilized in my collection, but it's still the really good BH Cosmetics formula, so I enjoy having it. Then we have Do Not Disturb, which surprisingly has become a favorite palette of mine. And it's also shown me, like, I would have never before put these kinds of purples with these kinds of blues together, but I have absolutely fallen in love with that color combination, and this palette kind of like unlocked the door as far as that goes for me. So this one is probably my favorite out of the Say It collection that I own. I just think every eyeshadow in this palette is so pretty, so nice, so well done. And again, it's one of those palettes where I feel like I can't get a bad eye look from it. And then the last one I have is the Low Key Love You. So this one again is on the more neutral side, but you do get some fun like pops of red in here, and the pop of red does play really nicely with this whole palette overall. I really enjoy this peachy shimmer shade down here. Don't get too much use out of the golden one down here, but overall just a really pretty palette. Some of these matte shadows though, like these two up here, kind of getting close into the same vibe, you know, like think Colourpop, how they'll give you like the same shadow just with a different name. So I don't know if we necessarily needed both of these. They kind of like look the same on the eyelids, but you can layer this one and darken it up and make it a bit different than this top one. Okay, have 3 palettes from their Sweet Shop collection. I think that this was a really fun collection, and they had a green palette, they had a more pinky purple one, and then they had a kind of like nude palette from there. I think there were only 6, so those are the 3 that I don't have, but this one is the Bubblegum palette. This is hands down my favorite monochromatic blue palette from within my collection. I love that you get an even split of 4 mattes and 4 shimmers across the board in all of the Sweet Shop palettes, and like I said, this is just my favorite monochromatic blue palette. I really enjoy the looks that I get from this, and I feel like there's a lot that I can do within this palette. And even like the darker matte blue shadows in here are really easy to work with, easy to blend out, and I really do enjoy that because I feel like most of the time the darker the shadow goes, the little bit harder it is to formulate, and so some brands struggle with like those darker shadows, but not within the BH Cosmetics formula usually. So yeah, this is the Orange Sherbet palette. I'm trying to not like blind you with mirrors. This one honestly I thought would be my favorite, and it's still really good. I still really do enjoy this palette. However, I wish it just went a little bit deeper because this brown shade doesn't go as deep as I would want it. But the shimmer shadows in here, again, are the star of the show. I am just more of a shimmer gal. I would rather, like, I really like the even split that a palette does. Like, so like this, when it's 4 shimmers and 4 mattes, I think that's my favorite. But if the palette isn't going to be an even split, then I would rather have more shimmers than mattes. So I really do enjoy all of the shimmer shadows in here. And that's not to say that these matte shades are bad. It's just, I don't think I am a full-on orange monochromatic eyeshadow palette or eyeshadow color wearer. I think I more like to combine oranges with other colors, and so I don't really come to this and get like full looks out of it. is what I'm saying. And I thought when I did scoop this up, I thought that like, oh, I'll be able to create like full on really pretty looks with that. So then the last one is the cherry on top. Again, this one is really pretty, and on camera it looks like these two shadows are like going to be really fun red shades, but they're not. They lean a little bit more pink. So I was joking with Misty that instead of calling this the cherry on top, they should have called it the strawberry on top, but that's neither here nor there. It's still a really fun palette. I really do enjoy this as far as like a pinky red, we'll say monochromatic palette goes, because if you do use this darker kind of berry shade down here and you pair it with the tart shade here, it does make that tart shade kind of retain more of its redness. It takes on like a little bit of berry, but it looks less pink and more red berry, if that makes sense. And so yeah, this is just a really pretty palette, especially to pull out for this time of year in the summertime. Like these shimmer shades up here, these top three, give me like juicy watermelon vibes as I drop the palette. It's okay. It's okay. It's not hurt. Did you think we were done with BH Cosmetics? Because no, we're not. So they did a remix dance collection, and I think it was my mom that found all three of these at TJ Maxx and she picked them up. So this is the 80s dance remix collection. These don't have mirrors on them, so I'm not going to blind you. This one is like, it's a good, I would say, rainbow palette, but they're more like on the neon side. Like they're not actual neon shadows, kind of like think the Blend Bunny, is it the Surge palette that has those neon shadows? They're not like that, but they definitely are brighter than like some of the other shadows within a rainbow palette that I have. I haven't used every eyeshadow from within this palette. I've really focused in, or not focused in, but I've really like stuck to using like the pinks and the purples from within here. But I do want to like play around with these limey kind of shades here, this green and this like bright orange. Haley, that is not an orange, that is a yellow, okay? Anyway, that's the 80s remix palette. This one is the 90s one. So this one is more on the pastel side. I think it looks a little bit washed out like in the camera and the viewfinder, but you've got, it goes like blue, pink, peach, darker pink, and then green. And so then like this palette, I feel like they thought a little bit more about how they laid it out, because then you've got like the what am I trying to say, the rows here kind of like make little like trios, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're a little overwhelmed by like bigger palettes, you can easily break this one down and see like, okay, well, I don't want to be too adventurous, so I'm just going to stick to these three or these three or these three. I think that makes it a little bit easier to like come into these bigger palettes. And then the last one is the 2000s Dance Remix. I think this one is probably my favorite out of the three, just because it does go from really light to really dark. And I do love that you get like overall a bunch of nice cool tone shades within here. I think that these just look really flattering, really nice, and I have enjoyed playing with them. I even do enjoy the like darker shimmer shadows from within this palette. Okay, so let's do these like two one-off palettes that I have from BH Cosmetics. Like these just don't fit into a like collection, you know what I mean? So this is the Galaxy Chic palette from BH Cosmetics. Now I used to own this one forever and a day ago, and I gave it to my mother, not because it was a bad eyeshadow palette, but because she really enjoys these like baked eyeshadows and marbled eyeshadows. Like, what was that eyeshadow that Milani discontinued but they had forever and a day ago? It was like a green, pink, gold baked marble eyeshadow. I swear to you, she has went through like 10 of those in her lifetime. So they discontinued that, and so I thought she would find some really good like shadows in here that she could use. And you can see if I bring this in, she did go to town on this shade, it looks like, as well as this shade up here. And I love my mother, but she uses Q-tips to put on her eyeshadows, and we're gonna have to have a long talk about that. But either way, this is a really fun palette. I'm happy it's back in my collection. And the most fun thing about this palette is I feel like some of these eyeshadows look a little bit bland in the pan, but once you put them on your eyes, like they're really impactful, they're fun to play with, and they're just, it's kind of like a surprising palette. I think BH Cosmetics has a really good baked eyeshadow palette formula. Now this is the only one that I have tried from them, but I've heard other people that have like the Zodiac or the Love Sign Zodiac or the Aurora Lights or any of those that have the baked eyeshadows, they really do enjoy them as well. So then this one was their holiday release from 2021. So this is the Mrs. Claus palette, the Lit List palette. This does not have a mirror. This is a Big Daddy eyeshadow palette. I do enjoy this, even though some of, like I said, these bigger palettes can be a little bit overwhelming. However, with this one, I do feel like you can break it down into like little quads, you know, and get like really fun looks out of here. But the other fun thing is that with this palette, if you do want to be adventurous and hop from row to row to row, you're able to, like the colors in here go really nicely together. Again, I ignored this shadow because it is a pressed glitter, and I know this whole like middle row looks like it's pressed glitters, but it's not. These are just very like, I don't want to say flaky shimmer shadows, but they're definitely like, these are a little bit different than like this kind of shimmer. Like this shimmer in comparison to like this one it's duller, but like I know this is a darker color, hear me out. It's like these more flaky shadows have that high shine to them, whereas like the other shimmer shadows that just look like shimmer shadows don't necessarily have that. But again, it's a really good palette. Okay, so my camera battery decided to rudely die on me, so if the angle has changed or anything like that, then I greatly apologize. We are going to wrap it up with BH Cosmetics though. I have some from their brunch series and then some from their travel series, and I do want to quickly apologize because the background of some of these palettes is holographic and like super reflective, so I'm going to try my best to make it to where the color representation looks good on camera. But anyway, kicking it off with the brunch collection, we have the Blueberry Muffin palette. You guys are not surprised to hear me say this is another favorite palette of mine. I feel like this is another good kind of blue palette. It's different from the bubblegum in that this one is more cool toned. This is also to me like a very neutral palette with good pops of blue to get you into blue eyeshadows, because at the end of the day you only have Cheat Day, So Good, Delish, and Tempting, and Stud Muffin that are like on that more blue side. The rest of them are really good grounding neutral eyeshadows that play really nice with the blue shades. So yeah, this is definitely a palette that I can't get over. Like I absolutely love dipping into this one and love creating looks with. Then we have the Mimosa palette, which again is a palette that I owned and gifted away, and then it came back into my life. So this one is very pink heavy, and I feel like it's a little too pink heavy. Like it doesn't go as deep as I would want. Like this shade down here is as deep as it goes, and even then as far as like being on the pink scale, like it's not really all that deep. And then some of the pops that you get in here, like this kind of limey yellow shade, I just don't ever feel like plays as well with these pink shades. Now the orange goes pretty well with them, and then you've got like just this standard neutral shade down here. But the shimmer shadows that are in this palette are really pretty, really stunning. So especially this pop shade and this champagne shade here, some of my favorite like pink shimmer shadows from within my collection. Then we have the OG favorite, the Avocado Toast. I think this is the first palette that I had where I was trying like the new BH Cosmetics formula. It's been a while though, so I really can't remember, but I do remember just falling head over heels with this palette like from the moment that they released it. So this to me is the perfect green palette. Every eyeshadow within here was thoughtfully like curated to the palette to where they all go together and play so nicely together. I feel like other brands try to achieve this kind of color story and they just fall short always. So like the most recent palette that comes to mind that I feel like falls short of this is the Urban Decay Wild Greens palette. Now I don't own that palette. I've never even looked at it in person, but just from what I've seen online, like it does give me the vibes of the Avocado Toast, but I feel like they limited themselves in the shadow selection that they did with that, whereas with Avocado Toast they gave you really good shadows to do a lot of like a variety of different green themed looks. So greatly do enjoy this palette. Now, okay, so we will move on into the travel series palette. So up first is Smitten in Switzerland. I do have the old packaging for mine, and if I'm not mistaken, the old packaging palettes came with a mirror, whereas the new packaging ones do not come with a mirror. But either way, this is, like I said, Smitten in Switzerland. I absolutely love the mix of like cool tones and warm tones that you get within this palette. I think that they offer for some really fun pairings. The shimmer shadows in here are really great. Just that outstanding like BH Cosmetics quality. And I'm really hoping that, you know, they're sneak peeking on their TikTok and other places that they have some travel series palettes in the works to be released this summer. Now they do look like they're a little bit smaller than these, and these are 16 pans. So I'm wondering if they're doing more of like a 12 pan or a 9 pan style palette. But either way, I'm excited to see them, see what they come out with, and I'm hoping that it's the same good BH Cosmetics formula because, you know, I don't know, Makeup Revolution does some weird things in my opinion, and they might want to change this good formula to their bad formula. But either way, this is beautiful in Barcelona, so this is what this one looks like. Again, a more cool tone heavy palette, but you do have like some pops of warm tones, like this shimmery orange shade down here is really pretty and lovely. I feel like this Barcelona palette gives me Lost in London vibes, which was one of their palettes that they came out with in the original travel series line. And then when they updated to like this new packaging, they didn't do Love in London. I think that this, and then one of the other ones, I'll pull it out next, I think that they just kind of recycled shades. So yeah, this to me looks like the Love in London, and it is a really pretty palette though, and I do enjoy playing around with this one. Then, like I said, this one is the Amalfi palette that they came out with. Now this one, when I open it, I absolutely love this color story. This is like a really good neutral palette that you can do so much with, but this one gives me Chillin' in Chicago vibes. And I'm only pointing that out just in case you're like lusting after either one of these, but you have either the Chicago or the London palette. Like, I don't think you need these. Just to me, they look like it's the same shades in maybe a different placement with a different destination city. But at the end of the day, I really do enjoy this one. This was one of the palettes where I was like, I had a lot of FOMO over it for some reason, even though it's just a standard neutral palette. I think it more boiled down to the fact that it was from BH Cosmetics, and I've always wanted the Chilling in Chicago palette, and they discontinued that one. So anyway, I found this at a TJ Maxx, and I, like, no hesitations, scooped this one up. Okay, then we have Passion in Paris, which was released in the summertime of 2021. And I think that this was a really fun summer release. It's not a color story that you see typically in the summer, because I feel like this is really dark and moody, whereas a lot of other brands are putting out like the more like bright, poppy, like, you know, summery kind of palettes. But I think that was kind of smart on them because it made this stand out a little bit more. But anyway, again, same great formula. I absolutely love the color story of this, and one of my favorite shadows is this matte red shade down here. It is just so easy to work with, so effortless to blend out, and it goes so well with so many of the other like matte and shimmer shades within here. Then we have Party in Puerto Rico, which was a little bit of a letdown for me, if I'm not gonna lie. So this totally gave me Natasha Denona Sunrise palette vibes because of the pops of like magenta and yellows and oranges in here. But with this formula, out of all the travel series that I have tried, this one is like a little bit different. So you can't layer the matte shadows on top of each other as successfully as you can with all these other travel series palettes. So what I mean is, like, let's say you want to use this bottom like really kind of red magenta shade down here, you need to go in with this shadow first, as opposed to like, let's say you wanted to layer that with the orange up here. Don't go in with the orange first and then layer it with this one. Go in with the dark first so that it becomes like dark like it is in the pan, and then blend it out with the orange. So I just had to like kind of relearn how to do my eyeshadow, you know, because I'm more of a start with your lightest shade and go to your darkest shade kind of person. But after learning like that tip and playing around more with this palette, like, I do enjoy it, but just out of all the travel series, it is my least favorite because of that. So then the last one to wrap up this video is the Lost in Los Angeles palette, which is their all pastel palette. I really do enjoy this. At the end of the day, I still have yet to do like a full-on pastel look, but I will say I do enjoy coming to this palette for like single shadows at a time to help blend out my darker eyeshadows, because I do have a lot of like more rainbow style palettes within my collection. And so having this is like a great companion palette to have that lighter version of that rainbow shadow that you're working with. And then the shimmers in here, I absolutely love and adore. I don't feel like there is a bad shimmer shade within here. Like, when I say bad, I don't mean formula wise. I just mean like, oh, hey, that's not like a color that I want in like my color wheel, you know, like not with this palette. Like, I feel like all of these shimmer shadows surprisingly work really well and play really nicely on my eyes. But yeah, that wraps it up for all of my drugstore palettes. Really just heavily featuring BH Cosmetics. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little deep dive into this. Again, I just love watching and gobbling up eyeshadow palette content. So I am probably going to take a break, and then I will go and we will film like the high-end, like indie version of this. So my plan is to upload this drugstore version on one day, and then the very next day upload the like part 2 to this. So I'm not like making you wait like a week or anything. And I appreciate you guys for being understanding and letting me split this up into multiple videos. But like I said, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you're having a good day, a good night, or a good whatever. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.